Last time on the WizardCast.
Welcome to the WizardCast, a podcast in Salesforce products, best practices, tips, careers, and community, all while trying to be funny.
Hi, Brian, isn't this the part of the show where we're supposed to have a silly plot that typically has nothing to do with the previous episode, despite that deeply powerful man saying it happened on the previous episode?
Well, yes, Mark, but I'm guessing we're going to have a whole bunch of new listeners for this episode, and I don't want to immediately confuse them.
All right. Okay, fine. So new listeners, you have been warned. Yes, this is a podcast about Salesforce, but we've got a fair amount of hijinks and tomfoolery as well.
Oh, by the way, Mark, it's episode 100!
Whoa.
Where's that disaster plan you're supposed to do when our episode ran into 3 digits? Everything's going to explode. We're all going to die!
Excuse me? I was supposed to do.
Although it is kind of strangely quiet. I mean, we're well into this episode, and I don't see anything exploding, burning, or... well, anything.
Well, look at that. You mean everything is okay despite having multiple episodes of us freaking out and building up to absolutely nothing in a hilariously stupid fashion, just like I said it would be?
Well, I do have a hangnail.
Now what?
Panic, Mark, panic, all the humanity!
What is it? What's wrong?
That's the warning signal. I'm just not ready for it. I just can't.
Get a hold of yourself, Brian. Did we actually break the show from hitting 3 digits?
No. That's not the everyone's going to die alarm. That's the Parker Harris proximity alarm. He must be in the building.
What?
I'm here.
Oh, I can't know. I can't believe it. No, it's Parker. I can't believe it's Parker. It's only 100 episodes. We're still not ready. Where are the questions, Mark? Why isn't he now on the script?
And now the conclusion of the WizardCast.
I'm Brian Kwong.
And I'm Mark Ross.
We're Salesforce experts that love talking about technology and Salesforce.
We also love humor. Doesn't mean we're actually good at it.
In the Salesforce community, I'm known as the Salesforce Wizard, likely due to me wearing a wizard hat at Salesforce events.
And I'm known as Salesforce Yoda for pretty much the same reason.
You should see the ears.
We have a passion to help educate and entertain people.
So we've joined forces to create WizardCast.
We've got tips and best practices.
We talk with interesting people.
All mixed with quote-unquote jokes and humor.
Welcome to the WizardCast. This is a very special episode, Mark.
And why is that, Brian?
Because this is our 100th episode without Parker Harris.
Hey,
Brian.
no, wait, I'm here. What are you talking about?
Okay. Sorry, old habits. Parker needs no introduction, but we're going to do one anyway because he deserves it. Parker is the co-founder of Salesforce, where he oversees product strategy for Salesforce, from design to development to service delivery. He's also a member of the company's board of directors, and we couldn't be prouder to welcome to our ridiculous little show, Parker Harris.
All right, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited for all your pithy and interesting questions. Let's go. This is podcast 100, and that's really interesting because when we started numbering our releases, I made up the brilliant idea to start with 3 digits because I knew it would take forever to get to more than 3 digits. So we started with 100 as our first release. We only use even release numbers now because when we started, we had this, what we thought was a brilliant idea to do an internal only release was the odd numbered release. And we used DNS to only allow people who were working in our office to be able to use the release. We forgot that it was the internet and people weren't always in our office release. And so we had mixed version use. So we only did that once, but we still do not do odd numbered releases for that reason. And so we're on winter is 222 for those of you listening.
This question, you can pretty much answer it any way you see fit. But the question is, why is Parker Harris where he is today?
I am in the Salesforce Tower today. The reason that I'm here today is because that's where my office is.
I told you, Mark.
Okay, so perhaps a little less literal interpretation.
Why am I here today? I am here today. I mean, life's funny. It's through a series of meeting people. Hopefully you meet the right people. I met my wife in college. That was good, and so that's the reason that I'm now married and an empty nester, actually. So my 3 children are all in college.
Congratulations on surviving.
And, I always worked in very small environments, and we had a little startup called Left Coast Software and met Mark Benioff through that. And so one of the reasons I'm here today is because of meeting Mark Benioff. And then before that, meeting Dave Molinoff, one of my co-founders and first CTO of the company. And then, timing and luck, definitely a lot of hard work but we had great timing because we started the company at a time early in software as service and cloud computing. It was really early days. People weren't investing the same amount of money they are in internet companies back then. So, it was just, there was less competition. We had a really good idea of leveraging the internet to, have a different distribution model for software. We were really lucky to have, I'd already had experience in Salesforce automation, but we picked an area of enterprise software that 20 years later turns out to be, very prescient. Salesforce automation that it then expanded into full CRM is now mostly because of the internet, because of mobile, because of social. Customer relationships have become front and center for every company, and the importance of managing those and worrying about your supply chain and your ERP and your HR. Yes, those are important, but the growth in terms of an industry has been huge in CRM. And, I think we benefited from that. Maybe some people would say we helped create that, but I think it's more that consumers and customers have a greater expectation of companies. A lot of it's because of the instantaneous gratification they get, through the technologies they're using as consumers. So they have higher expectations of relationships and service. And so we play right into that. And so that's probably the biggest reason that we're here, is that, we started at the right time in an area that's become front and center for pretty much every company in the world.
When you're at the office, you're obviously on for work. So how often do you just turn work off completely?
Turn off the phone.
Stop looking at emails.
Yeah.
Not answering Robin's calls.
I do that probably. The only time I do it is once in the summer. I go to a vacation home we have in Nantucket, which is off of Cape Cod, for a few days. Not much. So yeah, we're never off. I mean, we're always. I have trouble separating from Salesforce, and we do try to get our employees, including ourselves, to unplug more. Mark went on a vacation and shipped his computer and his phone to his home in Hawaii, so that he wouldn't have it with him. That was his way of unplugging. And so I do think it's important. I think we worry too much about being online all the time, and the next email, the next text message, and that you've got to, respond right away. And I think that's great for fast-paced businesses, but for personal wellness, it's important to find time to take a break. So I'm trying to do more of it. I would say it's a couple times a year that I do that.
Are there specific things that you like to do, like reading or nature
got
walks?
Really into golf.
Golf?
Yeah, in the summer, I got really into golf. In the winter, I go skiing.
Cross country or downhill?
Downhill. Well, actually both. I go downhill and then skate skiing, which is kind of cross country, but a little bit more aerobic. You know about skate skiing?
No, this is the first I've heard of it. I used to do cross country when I was younger and more fit.
Well, everyone did cross country, which is single track, And then in the Olympics, some guys like, oh, I could make the skis slightly shorter. And you know how if you put your skis in a V and you push, you skate, basically. He modified some skis and skated and basically blew everybody away and beat everyone. And they tried to disqualify him, but there was no rule against it. And that was when they created two different sports. One was not single track, but track, cross country, and then skate skiing. So if you ever see a groomed course, you'll see the tracks for two skis, and then the middle is kind of groomed and open. But it's good exercise. And I run for exercise. But yeah, do you guys play golf?
I used to.
Yeah. I tried. I tried picking it up in college because I was told it was a really good executive networking activity. And my teacher kind of gave up on me because I was not able to hit the ball in the drive. The first time I did, I hit it backwards and nearly hit him. So he moved in front of me behind the net, and I finally managed to hit the ball through the only hole in the net and almost hit him. And at that point, I was like, okay, golf is not for me. I'll stick to mini golf.
Or maybe you're just really accurate in how to.
It was a very passive aggressive. I don't like golf type of swing.
Yeah, although I've never played it actually for network. Actually, once for work. So Salesforce is not really a golf and work company.
We know that you've got a background as well in English literature.
I do.
Are there specific books, literary works, anything that has actually like influenced you and everything you've done?
Not really. I mean, I think in college followed James Joyce and loved Shakespeare. I'd say those are the two. Chaucer also is hilarious. I don't know if you read Chaucer, but his Bawdy Tales.
Oh, yes.
I loved Paradise Lost. Mainly, I wrote this great paper, mainly because, first of all, he was blind and he recited it to his daughter, who wrote down the entire.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The entire work. But the cool thing, it was all about, purgatory and heaven and hell and the devil. And, basically the premise that I was angling on is heaven would be, you couldn't describe heaven without having hell. That you needed opposites, and so you need opposites in life, and every day is not perfect, and Salesforce is not perfect, and, we have our issues. And I don't know if that doesn't really influence our culture, but if you compare that to Salesforce's culture is always looking for, ways to improve and kind of looking at the negative things. And then we market the positive things. So when you, our revenue is always going up, our adoption's always going up, our releases are always coming out, innovation's coming out, it all looks perfect. But it's not without its share of issues along the way.
What does a typical day look like for you when you wake up in the morning and you get going? What typically happens for you?
Typical day, I wake up, I put on a jacket like this, and then I do a podcast with you. Every day. Typical day, let's see. Wake up.
You have typical days.
Yeah, kind of. Depends. So, I like my coffee. You guys drink coffee?
Drink it black.
I've got a killer coffee machine. I make a latte, a couple lattes every morning at home. The Breville Oracle, if you would like. It's expensive, but it's a semi-automatic coffee machine. It's awesome. Anyway, that's our plug. Do we get any sponsorships for this?
I've been working on it for a couple years, but we used to have fake sponsors until I got tired of making them up. But
you should hit up Breville and see if they'll give you some cash.
I'm sure they're listening.
That plug,
or at least some coffee.
I'll take coffee. Yeah.
Get to work, probably around 8, and ideally have some time to crank through all the email that's backed up. And then I basically spend the entire day in meetings of all sizes. I would call this a meeting of sorts. It's a podcast, but it's kind of a meeting. It's a video meeting. I've already had 3-4 meetings before this today. I eat through meetings, so we get, sandwiches or whatever. I spend a lot of time around architecture now, so a lot of it's around various parts of our product service area. Sometimes it's around budgeting. Sometimes it's management meetings with various people. Last week I was in Tokyo doing the Salesforce World Tour Tokyo. So I also do that.
Very nice.
So I meet with customers. So yesterday I met with a customer who came to our Salesforce Innovation Center for the SIC. And so I try to meet a lot of customers as they're coming here, or I go out and see customers. So it's really a mix. It's all meetings, travel, and customers, and probably more meetings than anything else. And then with a nice dosage of cranking through email whenever you can find a free moment.
Through all that stuff that you have to do on a regular basis, what would you say is the one thing that is your favorite, kind of activity, the part of your day that you look forward to the most?
My favorite activity is going deep on technology with our best and brightest architects and debating not so much how they're doing it, but understanding it, challenging them, and trying to get, as best possible, trying to get the various architects to argue with each other, but hopefully come to consensus on various parts of the product. Whiteboarding with a bunch of geeks, pretty fun. So working with really smart people. So yeah.
I can definitely understand that. Since I've now gone up to .org, I can definitely say that it is the best and brightest that we have on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's great. Working with smart people, it's very rewarding, and working on hard problems. It's also rewarding, although not that fun, but it's rewarding working on customer problems and helping solve them with customers.
All right. So when you started up Salesforce back in, I think it was 99, right? That was a big undertaking. You basically went from a really small apartment and started building out from that. There had to have been doubts because it was a massive thing you were doing and it was very unprecedented. How did you actually kind of get through those doubts to come through to the other side?
Yeah, well, I also had 3 children under 2.
Ooh,
wow.
That was made it harder. Yeah. My secret was I would take 5 minutes of sunshine on my deck and I would just try to take a little break and humor, giving yourself little breaks and, letting the stress build up to a certain point and then realizing there's, only so far you can go, only so much you can do, and giving yourself permission to let it go a little bit. But yeah, it was hard. It's very stressful. That's why I have all this gray hair now, probably Salesforce and my 3 kids.
You said humor, Parker. What do you mean by that? Is it telling kind of jokes or making fun of yourself or the situation, or is it watching stand up?
It usually involves sarcasm and reflecting on the situation with others.
I can relate to that.
It could be worse jokes, when people think it's the end is near.
Yeah. At least since I've known the Salesforce ecosystem, there always seems to be some crazy stuff that's going on. But what's kind of the zaniest story that you have about working and being at Salesforce? Zany.
You want zany?
Yeah, crazy.
Zany.
I mean, there was a couple years where you were dressing up in costumes for Dreamforce. And if that was happening in front of that many people, I got to imagine that there were slightly more crazier things happening in the background.
Not to mention startup culture and everything.
That was crazier than most things. That was maybe not my best decision.
You did look good in the lightning suit, though.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy things were, we used to have, early on we had Segways. You know what Segway scooters are?
Yeah. I almost got ran over by someone pimping Microsoft once at Dreamforce.
Yeah, they were an early customer. So this is our first couple of years. When we used to do releases, it used to take everybody on site to do a release. And so we would race the Segways around the office, which was awesome. And then one time we tried to build a little ramp and jump the Segway. The problem is Segways, when they lose touch with the ground, they basically let go. The gyroscopes kind of stop. So don't try jumping your segways, my advice.
So you land and it's like immediate stop?
No, you fall midair. It kind of like turns into a noodle. And it's not very stable, is what I would say. So you do fall down pretty hard. We had a celebration when we exited our first data center. We had one large computer, one large database, and we exited a data center that could give us more space but no more power, or more power but no more space. And we said we need more space and more power because we have more machines that we would like to put in. And so we celebrated getting out and moving to a new computer and a new data center. We were so proud of ourselves, and we had a party at work. And then all hell broke loose right after that. And the system started crashing every hour for like 2 weeks. And so that was zany.
That sounds crazy. You have a party and then everything starts to break.
Yeah. What else? Our first launch party, boy, it wouldn't go over well now, but it was the end of software, right? And so we had a military theme and we all dressed up in fatigues and had no software, dog tags, and that was kind of weird. So we've had some crazy ideas. Some we never did. Like one idea we used to protest Siebel conferences, and I don't know if you ever saw that video of the people outside Moscone during a Siebel conference, and they were protesting software, saying software was bad and no to software. And then we had fake reporters come up and interview them. But then attendees started coming up, kind of wanted to know what was going on, and the reporters started interviewing them too. So we've done some crazy antics like that. One we did not do, thankfully, was we were going to have a burn victims unit, for people burned by software. And we were going to have like an ambulance and people with bad burns, and we did not do that. That would have been probably not a good PR move. Yeah.
And the funny thing is now, you have other companies doing the exact same thing to you, protesting Dreamforce, hiring blimps to fly overhead, all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I saw that last Dreamforce. That was funny.
So speaking of Dreamforce and speaking of zaniness, we got to know, whose idea was it to do the costume thing?
Mark Benioff's.
Oh, okay.
That makes so much more sense.
Can you tell? I mean, Mark's like, I got a great idea. And then every Dreamforce, when I stopped, he noticed, he kept saying, don't you want to wear a costume? How about a costume? He did that. He was lobbying me internally and externally.
Publicly?
Yeah, he thought it was great, but he wasn't the one having to dress up.
We loved it. So any plans to try to turn the table, so to speak, and get Mark to dress up?
I told him, fine switching tables with him and have him dress up. The only time he did was when he put on that Adidas tracksuit 2 years ago, but that was kind of a lame, he just threw it on over his suit. So that's kind of cheating. Mark will never dress up, like I did. I hope no one ever does. That was kind of, my family continues to be embarrassed by those old pictures of me in the crazy outfits, but I'm glad it entertained everyone.
Well, that's the strange thing. I think when people at Salesforce do that sort of thing, it really endears the community because it humanizes that external outreach that they do, instead of just being, here's a big keynote presentation. It adds something. It adds humor.
It does,
as you were saying.
Yeah, there you are with humor again. Back to that theme.
Okay, so onto a bit more serious of a subject. So also in those early days, I know there were a fair number of decisions that were made, engineering decisions in particular, things like the simultaneous release, which were pretty controversial at the time. And those were calls that you had to make. And those had to have been some very difficult calls. How did you know that some of those early controversial decisions were going to be the right call?
You mean how we do releases?
Right, yes.
That actually wasn't that controversial because maintaining lots of different versions of software is a much worse problem to have. So
it was certainly different, though.
It was different, and it put a big burden on us for quality assurance and testing. The big decisions, moving to Agile was a big decision, and the team, when we started the company, we released every few weeks, and then it was every month, and then it was every couple months, and then every 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then eventually we slowed down and we didn't do a release for an entire year because we were waterfalling, and we looked for advice and help from our advisor. We had a technology advisory board. A lot of people from eBay, they had this idea of the train model, so massive branching and automation, and when you're ready, you jump on the train, meaning you merge your branch into the main line and you're off and running. I said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's go. My team said, no effing way. We are not doing that. That will never work for us. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Well, what other good ideas do you have? And the team went off and came back and said, there's this new thing called Agile. It seems pretty good. And we should try it out with a few teams and see if it helps. And so I studied it and I said, all right, that looks like a great idea. But we're not going to try it out. We're going to do it for every single team. We're rolling it out for everyone right now. And they kind of were like, whoa, that's kind of aggressive. And I said, we've got an issue across the entire technology team. Of course, we weren't that big. I think we were a couple hundred people at the time in technology. And I said, the only thing I'm going to do is say time box it. So we're going to do the release. I don't remember what it was, but let's say April. So we're going to release in April. Here's the date. I don't care what we ship. You can ship nothing, but that's the date the release goes out. And everybody got upset. Like, wait, but what about these features? And what if we have more things we need to get done? I said, nope. We're just going to set the date and go. And that really was very helpful to unblock a lot of dysfunction that we had. So that was a big decision, but probably the biggest decision I made where I was truly felt alone was the decision to shift all of our workloads to the public cloud and move out of our own data centers. And we did that about a year and a half ago. And I had people on both sides of the argument who were extremely bright, extremely persuasive, arguing both sides of that argument. And ultimately, I had to make a final call, speaking with obviously Mark and a few others, but it was kind of up to me to make that final call. And that was probably the toughest one. And we're in the middle of a multi-year transition, but we were just not able to create that layer for ourselves, mainly because we were never going to sell it. So we never were investing enough to have enough of the engineering talent and IP to make a go of it, or even, not to mention the capital expenditure really necessary to get to that. And we tried. It was disappointing that we couldn't get there. I thought with open source and, enough bright people, which we had hired, we could get there, but innovation's weird sometimes. And since it wasn't core to, we didn't have customers for it directly. They were internal customers. We just could never really get over the hump and make a go of it. Meanwhile, properties like AWS are speeding along. The fear was if we don't make that decision, will someone come out and leverage really what I would call the new operating systems of the world, the AWSs, GCPs, and Azures, and build something far better than what we have and, beat us at our own game. That was definitely the biggest, hardest one.
So not picking any particular instance, but when something does go wrong and it's either you or maybe someone on the team makes a mistake, how do you handle it?
Well, you first worry about the customer or customers, and everybody jumps in and gets personally involved. So let's see, how would you think of it? The Pardot Permissions problem that we had. You think you're aware of that?
A little bit.
Yeah. So that was probably the worst that we've had. I got an escalation at 4 a.m. Pacific time and jumped on the bridge and the Hangouts and every other thing. And we all started working on that. And I think we got off that call about 10 to 12 days later. And it was all about first protecting our customers' data from a security perspective, and then bringing them back, availability back, and then bringing the state back or the permissions back to the known good. That clearly took far longer than it should have and severely impacted a lot of customers and the trust of our customers. But we handle it by not pointing blame, but getting everyone focused on what's most important, which is our customers. And then once you're through that period and customers are back to health, then you do a root cause analysis with everyone saying, all right, what are we doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? And what are the list of work streams that we are going to do that are going to make us better going forward? You don't want to just delegate and say, go fix this. You want to be part of the solution, and it helps morale a lot. Not that I know everything, but being in it and helping to manage it definitely helps the teams rally through it. And you don't want to point blame because you don't want to create a culture of fear where people won't speak up if they see things that could be problematic or problems or fear that might might freeze people from doing the right thing because they're fearful of making a mistake. So you got to give people the tools to fix things and make them better. You definitely want people to know when they make a mistake and and reflect on it. There was no problem in this case, and I don't even know I still don't know who the engineer was. I could have found out, but we chose not to.
Why did you choose not to? I mean, is the blame just not important enough? Because
it could have been any number of engineers that could have done it. It was a failure of how the script was written. Then the reviewer didn't review it well, and then the DBA that applied it didn't double check the results, and then our automation ran it everywhere. So picking a scapegoat's a mistake. That problem was owned by a lot of people and a lot of history. And so, it's too simplistic to boil it down to one person or one specific thing. We should not have been a process we had that worked when we had 3 databases, which is write a database script to go fix a bug and run it, was fine. With the right processes. But what we learned in that example is one developer should not be allowed to write something that can roll out and harm that large of a fleet that quickly. And that, there was a problem and just that was possible.
I think it's really refreshing, that perspective about not looking for the blame. Because I know when that particular outage happened, I was looking on social media and there was always the joke of, well, someone got fired over this. And I think the general culture in at least the United States is when something major goes wrong, someone gets fired. And that doesn't sound like that happens at Salesforce.
No, we have to have accountability. So I don't need to know who it was, but I'm sure that person's manager is managing that person, and there was a bad script that was written. So that's, not great. That's, so that should be something that is discussed. And, when you talk about raises and promotions and bonuses, that would be part of what you would look at when you're looking at this employee and say, well, how that happened and how are you doing it better in the future? But it's not about, find the scapegoat and fire them, and hang them out in the town square so that all our customers can see we've taken the one person to the woodshed and that's why it won't happen again, because that's actually BS. It's, it would totally happen again if we didn't do all the other work that was necessary.
Well, now we're going to come to the portion of our interview we call the lightning round, which is fairly appropriate in this case.
And not stealing from the admin podcast whatsoever.
So yeah, we just have a bunch of kind of quick questions. We'll rattle off here real quick. First off, peanut butter, crunchy or creamy?
Crunchy.
You agree with almost all my Twitter followers. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Bold statements. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Of course.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh.
It says a lot that this gives you the most pause so far.
I think I'd go Star Trek.
What would be your preferred superpower, invisibility or flight?
Flight, all the way.
Who would win in a fight, Chaucer or Shakespeare?
I think Chaucer would play dirty. Chaucer would win, and Shakespeare would think too much.
Along those same lines, next question is to be or not to be?
Well, that is the question.
And we're going to close out with the question we asked almost all our guests. If you could ask Parker Harris one question, what would it be?
Why did you agree to do this podcast?
That might be the best answer we've gotten so far. And so I guess in the little bit of time we have left, is there anything that you would wish to share with this platform that we have available to us of all of our 3 or 4 listeners?
Well, I have a question for you guys. What do you think of the revision of the idea exchange and how we're responding to what our MVPs and our customers think we should be doing?
That's a great question. We just had Jennifer Sachs and Scott Allen on the podcast a few episodes ago to talk about the differences. And the biggest thing I have to say is one of the reasons I like Salesforce is when someone takes you to the tool shed, so to speak, and points the finger and says, shame, 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 you typically don't sweep it under the rug. You acknowledge it and do something about it. And so the first step, which is the prioritization pilot that's been going on, I think is a very interesting one that has a lot of potential. It's going to be very interesting to see how it comes through, because I've already seen some discussions of why is one idea making the prioritization and not the next, and why did one idea not make the prioritization this round and that didn't win and isn't on the next list. So those are things that you kind of have to figure out. But I'm really excited to see what comes next and how it is received by the folks that have been using the idea exchange the most and maybe being the most cynical about it. And it's a little too early to wait and see, but I'm excited that Salesforce is doing something about it to try to improve.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people very eager to see an actual tangible something.
Right.
But, the fact, again, like Brian said, the fact that everybody stood up to attention and listened, that speaks volumes.
Okay, thank you. And then you wanted me to tell everyone on this massive platform something short, concise, and witty, I think is what you want. I think all I would say is thank you to everyone who's tuning in for your support of Salesforce, for the ecosystem, and keep helping us make all of this better.
Awesome.
Well, that was an amazing interview, Mark.
Yep, absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, I'm really glad we did it. Thank you very much for finally booking Parker Harris to come on the show.
But I didn't book him. I thought you did.
No.
Wait, if I didn't book him and you didn't book him, then who did?
WizardCast is produced by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, directed by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, technical administration by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, script writing by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, audio editing by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, website maintenance by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, and the intern this episode was no one, because it was too special. We don't need an intern this episode.
But you can be an intern if you so desire. Just follow us at WizardCast_pod on Twitter.
Or come up to us during events and tweet about us so we remember to add you to the list.
Since we clearly didn't this time. Have a joke, interview suggestion, or other comments? Let us know. You can call and leave a voice recording at 608-492-0321 or email wizardcast@thewizardnews.com.
And it totally wasn't because I was so nervous about Parker Harris that I forgot to put the intern in the script. Nope,
Sure.
Not at all. And eventually we're going to do another Idea Exchange highlight. That's where we talk about ideas posted on the Idea Exchange, typically shared by you. They don't have to be posted by you. It could be something you voted on, commented on, whatever. And if we get enough of them, maybe we can convince Jennifer Sachs and Scott Allen to come back and join us for the conversation.
Go to bit.ly/idea highlight to submit it to us.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WizardCast and receive our next episode automatically.
And please post reviews on Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, and share this episode. It helps others to hear what you just had to endure.
Once again, I'm Brian.
And I'm wondering, where are we going to go from here? It's Parker Harris. What's after that?
I didn't think about that.
No, neither did I.
Thanks for listening.
This is Parker Harris, live.
We'll totally use that.